Today we are welcomed by a great friend of the podcast. You've heard him before, the author of the David Slaton Assassin series, the Jammer Davis series, who we have back here again, and the standalone book Deep Fake. We love talking to you about that one. What was that, last year or earlier this year?
Yeah, that was this year,
That was
actually.
this year. Yeah. Well, welcome back, Ward Larsen.
Yeah, welcome back, Ward.
Thanks, guys. Good to be here.
You came out with another banger, and we told you right before we got on that I have a hot take. So I just want to clear the air and get this off my chest. Ward, if you weren't considered on the short list to take over the Mitch Rapp series, that is just a disrespect, because
Criminal.
You deserve so much more with these books that you're pumping out. We love every bit of content you are writing. You have a great book here, and I have to say, reading this book gave me the comfort I feel when I pick up a Mitch Rapp book. Just the fun, the enjoyment, the thrilling action. It was so Flynnian, and I felt like I was right back with Vince Flynn reading this book.
You made a post to that effect this morning, and it made me think back about this. When I wrote this book, it was probably 18 months ago when I started. I had a few things that I knew were going to be in the story. I knew there was going to be an attempt on the life of the president. And after that, Slaton was going to get involved. There was going to be conspiracy in Washington, and he was going to end up getting kind of injured at somewhere along the line. And all those things made me think back, and I thought, kill shot, Vince's second book. And I went back and I read some of that book, and before I even started. And the first thing I remember was that I just was like, oh yeah, this is a really good, well-written book. I hadn't read it in a while, and it kind of came back to me how good a writer Vince was. Those early books really jump out at you.
Yeah.
I kind of went back, and every time I would start writing those first few scenes, or certain scenes in the book, I would go back and just kind of reference that to kind of get in that frame of mind, to get in that voice, doing some of those things right that he did. And I always tell writers this, if you get stumped or if you want to, improve your writing, think about the story that had that kind of scene in it that you remember, that sticks in your mind, and go back and read it just to kind of get in that mindset. And that's what I did. I referenced that book a little bit at the beginning, and I think it helped. And that's probably why, you made that association. Maybe some of it came through.
Yeah, definitely that. Definitely, Vince's first book, Term Limits, comes to mind. Transfer of Power. Yeah, his
25th
first,
Amendment.
Yeah, exactly. And he's not the first one to do this sort of White House down, like not a White House down, but
right.
like the president comes under fire. But anyways, I think I liked your refreshing take on it, and you're amazing with incorporating aviation, obviously, because it's your I guess primary passion, or I don't know, is writing now your primary passion? But sort of taking that story and then bringing it into the 21st century in a sense, by giving us the drones, giving us new technology, giving us a new villain in terms of China. I definitely want to talk to you about that, because it seems like China seems to be this hot topic that very few people, Brad's done a little bit. I've read it in a couple other novels, but everyone loves to go to Russia and the Middle East, but going to China, they really are our true adversaries right now. So
yeah,
I like this sort of reframing of, taking a familiar, like a warm blanket, this familiar story, putting a new twist on it and giving it your flair, having your character in it. It was a really fun read.
Good. Yeah, I do kind of put the aviation spin on things, and it's easy for me. I get ideas, I'm out and about flying. I keep up with the flying world. But it's funny, the scene at the very beginning that opens a book where there's an attempt on the life of the president. Well, this kind of came from real life, the seed of this. I was actually flying. I fly for an airline. I was flying into Reagan National one night, and Reagan National Airport is right there by the White House. I mean, you're just a mile and a half away from the White House when you take off. There's prohibited airspace all around. It's a real big deal. But I was doing an approach into Reagan National, and it was nighttime. And we had been listening on the way in, my first officer and I, and we noticed, and when we were talking to approach control, that we could hear Air Force One checking in. And we knew Air Force One was inbound to Andrews. And with that alone kind of surprised me that they would just talk on an open air traffic control frequency. They're coming.
Wow.
So we spotted him because we knew where Andrews was. That sticks out. And we were on final to DCA, which kind of parallels the final approach of Andrews by about 8 or 10 miles. So we weren't that far away from Air Force One. I know Air Force One has a bubble around it, but it wasn't as big as I thought it would be. And I said, gosh, you could kind of, from where I was, you can kind of see him. You can see him land, and it just went on from there. That whole idea of what the beginning.
How can you take this and exploit it in a plot?
Yes, yeah, and nothing I got in this, all that whole scenario with the drones. I didn't use any intelligence about Marine One or how they operate. That's not publicly available. That's all open source stuff. I don't know anybody that works for the squadron. The Marine Helicopter Squadron One. That's all open source stuff. So what I did, anybody could figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you say about Reagan is crazy. I remember my first approach, and I'm never too much of like a window seat guy, but I remember looking out the window and I was like, wait a minute, we're that close to everything? You're literally coming right behind the Washington Monument, and you're looking at Lincoln right there, I couldn't believe it. And I'm like, how many seconds would it take to veer off course and all of a sudden hit any number of important buildings? God forbid, but like, do you think, are there protections built in? I know there are like surface to air kind of stuff, but are there any protections built in to be able to like overtake the controls of the plane remotely? Because those planes, commercial jets, get so close to the White House.
They do. There's a prohibited area right there around the White House. And as you take off from Reagan National, you have to do an immediate turn. If you're taking off to the north, you have to do an immediate turn to the left to follow the river. You follow the Potomac all the way away from town. But if you bust that, we get notices about it all the time because people get lazy and they kind of drift out a little bit and touch that airspace, and it's a big deal. And what protections there are, I don't know. I'm sure there's some kind of surface to air missiles, but the thing is, the amount of time you would have to react to make all those decisions to, do I shoot down a commercial airliner in the next 25 seconds? There have to be protocols where it's just automatic, the decisions being made. I don't know that. I don't have any proprietary knowledge, but you are just less than a minute from the White House when you take off from Reagan National.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Wow, that's crazy.
And you even get the helicopters, right? Because East Potomac Park, which is where the hero jumps in. Yeah. I'm playing golf there all the time. East Potomac Park has the bike trail. It's got a public golf course. And you see choppers all day, going up and down every 15 or 20 minutes, and they're flying real low. Just that scene was so visceral to me. And then the War College on the other side, you even hear them playing taps at nighttime. If you're ever there, at sundown while you're playing golf, it's pretty crazy. And I was taken there in this book, and that again is another Flynnian thing, because Chris and I both lived in DC. Chris grew up in the area. I'm still here. And we kind of critique some authors when they get the details wrong.
When they get it wrong.
Vince Flynn got every detail right, and you're getting every detail right here.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you get DC spot on. So
yeah, I've been there many times, and I fly in and out of there all the time. It's not that big an area, it's a fairly small city, and it's all just right there. So it's
right. And then you come up with this crazy invention, because another thing thriller writers have to do is find a new way to kill people, right? And assassinate people. Yes. It's like, you think everything in the book is done, and then you come up with a web of drones through some AI system dropping this Kevlar webbing. Where the heck did you get that from? That was wild.
Well, you've probably seen it too. I've seen drones at like sporting events and things like that where they operate in unison. It's AI. They're talking to each other. And I read Aviation Week, so I kind of get updated on the most recent. I try to keep up with aviation, but drones will do that. The way I had the drones operate in this book will easily do that. The thing I kind of added on and made up was this Kevlar strap, and I think the thing that made me go to that. Helicopters are kind of soft targets. They're not real robust machines. There's a lot of moving parts moving in opposite directions, and it doesn't take much to get caught up in a rotor hub to really do a lot of mechanical damage. So that was kind of, I just made it up, but I think it would work.
Right.
Perfect. Perfect.
You just got to get something stuck in that rotor.
I mean, I told you, right? It sounded like it would work to you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You had me convinced. So.
Absolutely. I thought it was
But the key
wild.
was figuring out which helicopter the president is riding in. And
Right.
that's where I threw in another thing, which I could see that happening. That was where pilot and knowing how the airspace is structured, how close you could get, how far away you'd need to be, and you could see these things. I think that helped.
Yeah, and I guess because I'm reading it and I know that you have a better knowledge of aviation than like other authors, I believed you more. So like in that sense that like, when you're describing that they're able to fly that low and, you know, be undetected or, not raise suspicions. And then, any good pair of binoculars are going to be able to visualize this stuff. So yeah, like I guess knowing your background kind of had me more bought in that sense. But either way, I think it works. It plays. Yeah. It's a good plot.
Yeah, I think it was a good opener. I was happy with that part.
Yeah. No, the opening part of this book is it hooks you right from the beginning.
Yeah, it was screaming from the get-go.
Cool.
And then you build characters. You start fleshing them out right away, which are also compelling. I remember talking to you in Assassin's Edge about having a villain carry over, and you wet our whistle with the Trident. How much fun did you have getting to flesh that story out more fully? Or did you know back then who these guys were going to be and what their connection is to China and how they're kind of like on the outs in China, right? They were kind of on the edge of society.
Yeah, I had them in there and I knew I was going to use them ahead, but I didn't really identify them in the previous book. I just had them more loose in the previous book and I had them get away. Those part of the bad guy, that part of the bad organization got away. But I knew I was going to come back to it in the next book. And that's when I really got in and kind of fleshed those guys out.
How did you know you wanted to invoke the 25th Amendment in this book? When did that idea pop in your head? You just knew that you wanted to have it?
Yeah, well, I knew I wanted to have an attack against the president, and I know I wanted to have a plot, within the government. So that will kind of naturally follow to get into the 25th Amendment. And, there's some precedents for that. I had to research it a little. I'm not a constitutional law expert, so but it's, it was interesting, actually. I find out a lot of interesting things researching books. I'll just be talking about stuff and I'll just all of a sudden some oddball thing will come up. Oh, yeah, I researched that, the Al Khalifa Tower in, Dubai or something.
And like, did you have any inspiration about, coming up with some of these, sleazeball political characters, or just you have
I mean,
anyone you can pick from in today's
lots of models, lots of examples.
Target-rich environment these days. What I had to do is, you want to create characters, more than one suspect. You don't want it to be obvious who's going to be the traitor. And so you make some sleazier than others, some more subdued, and you kind of mix it up. So yeah, some are just straight on sleazy politicians who we all can relate to, and others are more subtle.
And those power dynamics, even not just in the West Wing, but at Langley with the takeover by the one guy. Yeah, it was almost like an Agatha Christie, so you've got different things going on, but that one felt like a whodunit.
Right.
And you even worked in these little cliffhangers at the end of chapters when, the phone rings somewhere in the West Wing, someone steps out to take the call. That was really cool how you made these little cliffhangers that kept us wanting. Did you know in the end, though, who it was? Like you had a plan that it was spoiler warning.
I knew it was going to be
VP.
Yeah, I do. And you kind of structure the characters to build to that in the end. Yeah.
But we thought it could have been the CIA director. We thought it could have been the chief of staff, the VP chief of staff.
Right.
The stage was set.
Yeah, there's a lot of suspects that, but I think like if on reread, because I listened to it twice, I could see more of the undertone foreshadowing of the VP. I could see it more once I already knew, So.
Right.
I feel like there was somewhere though that you threw us off. I think one of them, it was either his chief of staff or the VP was like, but what do we do with Corsair at the end of the op? Like, don't we take him home? And it made it sound like the VP wanted to save him and take him home.
Uh-huh.
Was that like a sleight of hand, or was I reading too much
Yeah,
into it?
yeah, and you have to be careful. You don't want to mislead the reader intentionally.
Sure.
And I probably get things in there that are not quite, that don't come across quite as I intend. So I don't remember the specific wording of what you're talking about. I recall it, but
I remember you threw me off though, and I appreciated that because it kept me thinking, it kept me wanting, instead of
good.
drawing my conclusion early,
Okay.
instead of pulling up Poirot and figuring it all out.
Yeah.
And then you do something different here, which Chris and I are both a big fan of. We're on the golf course.
Yeah.
How did that one come about?
I mean, think about it. For a sniper, is there
It's
any
so true.
better place on earth
So true.
to go work than on a golf course?
When you were describing the guys on the putting green and he's watching
Yeah.
them through the scope, I'm like, it's so true.
That's so true. Can you think of a better spot for a setup like that?
There was one part where before he even leaves, that he's like sort of looking at all the holes, right? And he's like, this would be the perfect hole to where I should set up because of this. I was like,
he's looking at the course map, seeing what works
exactly.
out best. Yeah.
And the timing, about how long the course plays and how
right. Is it going to be a slow day? Is there going to be a slow group in front of them? I played a little bit. I'm no good at it. But
so you're a scratch, right? Scratch
yeah,
golfer
right.
You live in Florida, so you should be good at golf.
I really wonder though. I'm like, what if we talk to a sniper? Like if we ask a Jack Carr or somebody who's been there, it's like, that's got to be the easiest shot in the world. They're in the wide open. And all the rich people and their cronies who would be caught up in some elitist cabal, they're going to be out there playing golf at some point with somebody.
Yeah.
Man,
where your target's going to be. He's going to be standing still for a fixed amount of time. And you even got a little wind reference for the flag, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Perfect.
That was a great scene. And I loved how it was written. That was a great scene. I was a little disappointed though. We didn't channel some Die Hard action, say 4 motherfuckers. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfuckers, 4.
That would have been good. Yeah.
Slaton has a certain sense of humor, but not quite John McClane.
No.
So Hong Kong, we mentioned it before. China. What made you go that route? Because Chris and I have been saying for a while, China's seems to be the easy next wave, right? So many authors have done the Middle Eastern Islamic extremist. We've done the Russians, right? We've heard about that ad nauseum. So what made you go to China?
Well, China is the natural assumed enemy going forward. So yeah, I definitely wanted to involve China. But Hong Kong and Macau are kind of unique because they're Chinese territory again, but they're not really, because they're trying to kind of make them more Western. So the rule of law, the surveillance isn't quite what it is on the Chinese mainland. So it's sort of a middle ground. I think it would be easier for someone like Slaton to operate, and the Trident easier for them to live there. They're kind of on the outs too with the Chinese government. So it's sort of a middle ground, and that's where I wanted to go. Plus, it's an interesting area. I think one of the Bourne books was also set in China, was it not? But
yes,
that's an interesting area.
One of the original one, not the movie. The Supremacy, I think, is all about China.
Yeah.
And then there's a few action movies I feel that go to Macau and the gambling and the casinos and working that in, which is right there next to Hong Kong. Which brings us to the Manchurian monk. Really, really cool character. And again, a Ward Larsenism, finding these really cool connections that you could weave in. Recruiting gamers, if you're writing a thriller for the new generation, who knows what AI and gaming will look like, but you're recruiting gamers, that's crazy.
First person shooters, that's what how many people in China have played these games and gotten really, really good at them. They go into tournaments, and there's a certain amount of use to it. But it was just something that some senior person suggested, and they put a program in. And of course, it was an abysmal failure for a lot of reasons. But a couple of people rose to the top and turned out to be useful. So yeah, that was fun. Yeah, that whole the whole first person shooter thing in gaming, it just struck me as like these people are living in this alternate reality,
catching every detail, being able to multitask,
Yeah,
analyze things.
multitasking. Yeah, they know their weapons inside and out, a lot of them.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was wild seeing the inside of recruiting people
Yeah.
from the gaming community. And you probably get some very moldable individuals who could very much be warped into some sort of extremist view
Sure.
or made to do something.
But a lot
Probably.
of them are probably of like the incel type, you know. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, you could play up on that. So, you know, forgive me, but I haven't read every Assassin or David Slaton novel, but you know, I've read a few. Do you like? I know noticed with the Manchurian, you like to go back and do these like flashbacks, giving us a little bit of history of that. Is that something that you normally like to do, or is something that you picked up on in this novel?
Yeah, I like to throw it in just to give a little background. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
he's got a family, he's got a wife and a kid and another on the way, and yeah, he's got a background. And I don't want to get carried away with it. I don't want to give his entire resume in each book, but I just try to put a little few snippets here and there to kind of fill in his background, where he's coming from.
Oh, with Slaton, yeah. I was more talking about with the
The
with
villains.
Monk,
Oh, with
with the
Monk.
villain.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I like
you
cutting
know,
back to his like each of his little like sort of giving us a little villain origin story, I guess, within the book.
yeah. I think the villains are more believable. You want all your characters to be believable, and you can't give every single one a background, but I think it kind of makes them more real if you give them, a little bit of a childhood. There's some things that happened to them formatively that made them what they are. So yeah, I do like to do that with the villains where I can give a little background.
Yeah, and Chris, it's interesting you not having read as many in earlier in the series. Wouldn't you say this one could work on its own? And Ward, we had our patrons last night. We were doing a hangout, biggest supporters of the podcast, and talking about what should you read next. Obviously, I'm pushing your work because we love the series, and a few of them were like, "Do I have to start in the beginning?" I'm like, "Well, you could because I mean, what is it? The Perfect Assassin."
Perfect assassin, yeah.
I really remember the sailboat scene or
Yeah, yeah.
Cornwall, whole
Right,
lot of fun
right.
stuff.
Yeah.
But they were like, what if I want to read the new ones? I'm like, go right ahead. Like, I would
Yeah.
recommend Assassin's Strike. To me, that was my first Slayton book. I know it's a more recent one, but
Mhm.
you could jump in any of them.
You can jump in
Yeah.
anywhere. You write them that way intentionally. I had a big gap. I published The Perfect Assassin in 2005. And then for a lot of just publishing reasons, the next book in the series, Game, didn't come out for 7 or 8 years later. So it's a big gap in there in between books 1 and 2. And then it was pretty much one a year after that.
Yeah.
So there was a gap between 1 and 2. And I look back now, and there are some people using beepers and things like that. The technology has changed a lot in that amount of time.
Yeah, it's interesting going back and reading some of those books. We've seen that just it ages, you can feel it.
Yeah,
So,
some of the long running series. I mean, I'm sure the first couple of Vince
right.
books. Brad
Calling them
Thorpe.
cellular phones or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
And each one, again, talking about a Ward Larsenism, it has I guess a vehicle is the right word, both a vehicle as a literary device, but also a vehicle quite literally. We had drones in Assassin's Strike. The last one, Assassin's Edge, we had the submarines. We were underwater. And here we have drones again, but even a manned drone, if you will, at the end. That was a kind of neat invention, this prototype
Yeah.
of a delivery system, including for humans, that can be
Yeah.
used to enter, covertly into another
very
territory.
cool.
Yeah.
Have you seen those?
I have seen things like that are in development. I don't know if there's exactly that. As again, I read Aviation Week, and there's all kinds of things being dreamed up these days. There's drone wingmen for fighters that are going to just fly alongside fighters with then
Oh wow.
carry missiles and radars of their own, and they could be sent ahead autonomously in high threat
Jeez.
areas. All kinds of things. And there's in the one I'm working on right now. There's actually a spacecraft that's being designed right now that can deliver a small payload anywhere in the world within 3 hours. And it's designed as like an expendable vehicle to just get a few guys or just some material. It can be autonomous or it can be piloted, and anywhere in the world, 3 hours, it goes off a rocket.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Jeez.
it's out there.
That's crazy.
I mean,
That's
and you
game
look at
changing.
what's going on in Ukraine right now. There's some real low cost stuff, that people are coming up with.
Right.
That's going to be probably a future book too, just some small scale terrorist coming up with, just something off the shelf and coming up with a unique way to use it.
Right.
And yeah, it's technology is changing a lot faster than we can adapt to it.
Right.
So what's next for Slayton? I get this vibe that he wants to be this more of a family man. He's like obviously has a kid, another one on the way.
Yeah, he does. And at the very end, what
A
happened?
girl.
Right.
Yes.
A girl. He has
That's
a girl.
right.
But he also gets threatened to take over the clandestine.
Yeah. Talking about Vince Flynn, though, I hate to keep doing this. I really hate to keep doing, but we saw when Mitch had to struggle with being offered the Near East position and the desk job at Langley. He fought against putting a suit on constantly. He's also a family man dealing with that. And I think it's what's important in these thrillers is that they're not just a one-dimensional killer, assassin.
Sure.
Some people like that in their books, but I like seeing them as humans, as well-rounded humans. And I thought those two little nuggets at the end brought out the human side of Slaton. Were you going for that?
Yeah, I was. I mean, you gotta be able to relate to that. So that's the threat that's on the table for him, and we'll see where it takes us. I'm working on the next one. There is going to be a big shift on the next one. I'm not going to release it just yet, but there is going to be a pretty big shift in the next book. So
okay.
Well, you mentioned there might be some space stuff. So all right.
Yeah.
It's like the latest Fast and the Furious when they go into space. So.
I'm a little scared. I'm not going to think about it because my mind jumps to Consent to Kill, but okay, I don't want to know anymore. Jammer Davis. Now, forgive me if I missed it. Has he come into this universe in the past yet?
He has. He's been in 2 or 3 books now.
He was in a couple of them. Okay.
And he's Sorensen's significant others, so I've got kind of a universe going on. And he makes occasional appearances. And he's a good, useful character. He's very reliable.
Hanging with Davey too is just a blast. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What was that with the seaplane? Do you have experience with seaplanes? And
I'd never been checked out. I had a friend that had one, so I've been up in seaplanes before. It's a lot of fun. It really is. And I've got a little experience with them. So and that's how you get around in Canada and then the Yukon, places like that. That's the only way you can get places in a seaplane. So it just kind of made sense, and it's a good way to get off the grid because there's just a million lakes up there you can go get lost on.
And I thought it was pretty cool when he flew over and dropped the message to her. And
in the general aviation community, they actually do contests where you will go. It's like bombing practice, where you fly over and there's a target on the ground, and you throw out a little sandbag and see if you can hit the
target.
And that's something that's actually does exist.
I'm learning a lot.
Now, one thing that I don't know if it's been done before, a blender as a torture device. Please tell me you don't have experience with that one.
It was a mortar mixer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and he turns on all the other saws and the construction materials.
Right.
If you think about it, a construction zone really is a right place for finding improvised weapons.
Very much so.
I feel like there's been a lot of movies where the final scene is in like a abandoned building, a construction site.
Yeah.
It's just ripe for the killing.
Yep.
So what about Deep Fake? Because you took that little journey into a standalone book, and it was a shocking success. Our patrons, even yesterday, we were talking to a couple of them, had really liked that one, and it was a good way for them to get into your works, even if they hadn't read Slaton. And now they're kind of clamoring for more. So do you envision that coming out again? Another either follow-up to that one or another standalone?
Yeah, that one's pretty much just by the nature of the story. It was a standalone story. The characters aren't going to return. I might do another standalone. I actually have a couple other things in the works right now. And again, I can't get into it because it's not finalized just yet, but there are some bigger things on the horizon. So stay tuned.
Okay. All right.
I'm glad to hear that.
Well, we at least know we have one Slaton book for next year.
Yes,
right?
one Slaton book is just about done. It actually won't be out till right now. It's February of 25. It's going to be just over a year till it comes out. But then I have 2 coming out the year after that. So
yeah,
staying busy.
Yeah, and someone else who's busy is whoever's designing these covers, because I talked to you about Assassin's Edge with the submarine and love that one.
Yeah.
This one might even one up it though.
Yeah, I love the covers. I don't know if it's the same person doing all the designs, but they're really knocking them out of the park. I really like the covers they've been doing. I thought Deep Fake was a really good cover, very eye-catching.
Yes.
Deep Fake
was
was
a really good
great.
cover.
Your cover game is on point.
Yeah. I'd like to take credit, but that's Tor doing it.
Yeah. So do you have any say in it, or you're given options, or you're told
They
like
they ask me for ideas, because they haven't even seen the book when they start working on the cover. So, just give us some ideas and they pretty much stick to what, I give them. And
Right.
so I give them just a general idea. Usually it's some kind of, military machine on the front or something like that. And they run with it. And I try to give them specifics of what kind of fighter it should look like, that kind of thing. And they run with it. They do a really good job. It's funny. I know another writer who didn't have such a good cover design team. She wrote mysteries, just sort of Florida mysteries, and she wrote this book. And she talked about the cover, and they just totally ignored her. And they sent back a cover design that was an airboat with a body on the front that was like wrapped in a tarp or something. And she was like, "There's not an airboat anywhere in my book." The cover guy just thought it would be exciting, so he just threw it in there.
You'd be amazed. That's funny that like the author said that, because you'd be amazed the amount of times we've judge a book by the cover, or judge a cover by the book. And there was one Mitch Rapp one, right, where they're in a train in the middle of like the Sahara or snow, like
It's like
in Russia
Siberia.
somewhere, Siberia, and then the plot I think took place in like tropical, Southeast Asia. Like, it had nothing to do with it. It's funny how these things make it past so many people, and it's like, oh, I guess they just don't care. I don't know.
We have a passion on this podcast for the cover has to relate to the story. It absolutely has to. And I'm looking through
we shouldn't
yours.
say that, Mike. It has to, at least. If it doesn't relate, it can't not relate. Like, it's one thing to be like there's political, generic thriller things that we're fine with if they look nice. But like, if you make a choice to have something that is going to potentially relate to a story, like a building or, some sort of vehicle, then it should be in your novel. Right?
They get the city wrong sometimes. Like a landmark in the wrong city.
Yeah.
Like they put Paris and like they don't ever go to France. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They just put the Eiffel Tower because people recognize it.
Right.
I'm looking at your covers though across the board, and not one of them misses the mark, and they're
I've been
all
happy with
related.
it. Yeah.
Shout out to your team, because they are working. They're putting in the work.
I will pass it along. Yeah, I haven't seen the next one yet, but I should get that one soon.
Okay. All right.
Ward, what are you reading? Let's hear just not even books, but is there any, we like to ask our authors, any media, any TV shows, anything right now that's got your attention that you want to share with the people?
I do a lot of audiobooks. Because I drive to Orlando once a week, so I do that Audible program. I get a book a month, and that's about what I listen to. So it's hard for me to find time to read a lot. And so I tend to more listen to books. I listen to a Michael Connelly book. He's a very reliable author. I like his police procedurals, his Bosch books. What else am I doing right now? I read a lot of nonfiction, really. I was talking to another well-known writer about this too, and people ask where you get your ideas, and I read the newspaper. I read at least 2 or 3 newspapers every morning, not cover to cover, but I catch the parts that catch my eye. I read, and I just read a lot of news, to keep up with current events around the world, and so I do that a lot, and some trade, aviation type things I read. And other than that, I'm just writing all the time and flying airplanes.
I guess when you're flying, you can't have an AirPod in, right? Listening to a book, huh?
No, I can't listen. No.
You had that one joke, a pilot joke about falling asleep. When he was the third man, but couldn't actually pilot the plane. There was some joke among pilots in this one.
Yeah. I know the one. Yeah. Cause he was supposed to be the third crew member for a long flight. And,
right.
You're supposed to have three, but yeah, you can get by with one on the flight deck probably.
Well, Ward, it's always a blast talking to you. We like to do a little tradition here, which is a no limits limerick. And I got a little one here about the story itself. A couple of things we referenced already here. So
Is this something new? I don't remember the limerick. Is this a new thing?
You haven't done a limerick from Ward yet?
I haven't done a limerick in a while. You haven't gotten one yet. That's a shame. That's on me. A lot of our interviews, we like to give a limerick to the author. Sometimes they're about the book. Sometimes they're about just the author and their background. But this one's definitely about some of the creative things you do in this book. So, as the West Wing rose up to a clamor, on the trident they'll drop the hammer. A great shot on a par 4. Oh, wait, but he didn't yell for. Can't we all just use a friend named Jammer?
Mike, that might be one of your best ones there.
Thank you, Chris. I was feeling a little uneasy about this one.
That is on task for the book. I agree. He should have yelled 4. He should have whispered 4, right?
He should have whispered 4 right before he took the shot.
I missed chance right there. I didn't see it.
That's funny. Funny.
Jammer also has a little one on the way. I think that's what Anna was hinting at. There's something going on there. Am I putting the pieces together right?
We'll see. Stay tuned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a surprise for Jammer and Anna. There's something. Okay.
Yeah.
Something coming.
I like those two characters. Yeah.
You're keeping the suspense up. What month did you say? Do you know when we can expect next year?
The next one will be not next year. I want a book coming out next year, but it'll be February 25. So about
25
months from now. Yeah.
Okay.
And a year after that, 2 books, I believe.
All right.
Great stuff to look forward to. And thanks for coming back. I think we'll have to count, but is this your 4th appearance on No Limits?
Sounds right. Yeah. Sounds right.
That puts you on the top list for
You're
most
definitely
appearances.
one of the top.
Oh, is it really?
If not the top. Yeah,
I think Chris Howdy. We've had Chris Howdy a number of times. Kyle Mills, of course. But I think you're up there. You're in the top 3 for sure. So thanks for coming on again. Thanks for these books, and
yes, thank you.
Keep them coming.
Yeah, have a great holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays to you and everyone.